The sky over Capsule Corp was an eerie shade of crimson, the air thick with the scent of burning metal and ozone. The once proud cityscape lay in ruins, buildings reduced to smoldering rubble. At the center of the devastation stood Goku, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a cold, detached resolve. His gi was torn, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead, but his eyes burned with an intensity that sent shivers down even the bravest warrior's spine. Across from him, Trunks, son of Vegeta, stood panting, his lavender hair matted with sweat and dirt. His sword, once gleaming, now bore chips and cracks from their brutal exchange. "You don't understand, Goku," Trunks growled, his voice strained with desperation. "This isn't you. Something's wrong, you'd never turn on your own family." Goku's response was a flicker of movement, his body blurring as he closed the distance in an instant. His fist connected with Trunks' gut, the impact sending the young warrior crashing through what remained of a Capsule Corp storage facility. Trunks coughed up blood, barely managing to roll aside as Goku's foot cratered the ground where his head had been. "You're weak," Goku said, his voice eerily calm. "Just like your father was." Trunks' eyes widened in horror. The mention of Vegeta, his father, slain by Goku's own hands, ignited a fury within him. His aura flared, golden energy erupting around him as he ascended to Super Saiyan 2. Lightning crackled around his body, his muscles swelling with power. "You monster," he roared, launching himself at Goku with a flurry of punches. Each strike carried the weight of his grief, his rage, but Goku dodged or blocked them all with unsettling precision. Goku countered with a vicious knee to Trunks' ribs, the sound of cracking bone echoing through the battlefield. Before Trunks could recover, Goku grabbed him by the throat and slammed him into the ground, the earth splitting beneath the force. Trunks gasped, his vision swimming, but he refused to yield. With a desperate surge of energy, he unleashed a point-blank Masenko, the blast scorching Goku's face and forcing him back. Goku wiped the blood from his lip, his expression unreadable. Then, with a smirk, his own aura exploded into existence, a deep, ominous crimson. His hair darkened, his pupils vanishing as his power surged beyond anything Trunks had ever felt. "You still don't get it," Goku said, his voice distorted, almost demonic. "This isn't about strength. This is about survival." Before Trunks could react, Goku vanished. A split second later, a searing pain erupted in his chest. He looked down to see Goku's hand buried in his torso, blood dripping between the fingers. His breath hitched, his strength fading as the world around him dimmed. The last thing he saw was Goku's merciless gaze before darkness claimed him. As Trunks' lifeless body crumpled to the ground, Goku turned his attention to the horizon. Somewhere out there, another presence called to him, one he knew all too well. His son, Goten. The battlefield fell silent, save for the distant crackle of flames. The stage was set, the pieces in motion. And Goku, the once heroic Saiyan, had become the architect of his own family's destruction. Word count, 500. Note, this is part 1, focusing on the setup, initial conflict, and a high-intensity fight scene. The remaining 500 words would further explore Goku's twisted motivations, Goten's reaction to the unfolding horror, and escalating stakes. The air was thick with the scent of burning earth, the aftermath of Goku's devastating Kamehameha still smoldering in the crater where Trunks had once stood. Vegeta's roar of anguish echoed across the battlefield, his aura flaring crimson as he lunged at Goku, fists blazing with unchecked fury. "You'll pay for this, Kakarot," he snarled, each punch carrying the weight of a father's grief. Goku dodged with practiced ease, but his eyes were haunted, his movements sluggish, guilt weighing him down. Meanwhile, Goten stood frozen, his small frame trembling as he stared at the charred remains of his brother. Gohan's lifeless body crumpled nearby. "Dad. Why?" he whispered, tears streaming down his face. But before Goku could answer, the ground beneath them trembled, a sinister energy surging from the depths of the earth. A guttural laugh filled the air as a figure emerged from the shadows, Cell, reborn and more powerful than ever, his wings glistening with stolen energy. "How touching," he mocked, cracking his knuckles. "A family reunion turned massacre. But don't worry, I'll make sure none of you suffer for long." Vegeta's rage redirected in an instant, his scouter beeping frantically as Cell's power level skyrocketed. "Impossible," he spat. But Cell only grinned, his tail lashing like a whip. "Thanks to your little feud, I've absorbed enough residual energy to evolve beyond my perfect form." With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, forcing Goku and Vegeta into a desperate defense. Goten, still reeling, barely managed to roll away as the ground exploded around him. Goku clenched his fists, his guilt hardening into resolve. "Vegeta, we have to work together," he shouted, but the Saiyan Prince scoffed. "After what you've done? I'd rather die." Ignoring him, Goku flashed into Super Saiyan Blue, his aura erupting like a sapphire inferno. He charged Cell, their fists colliding in a shockwave that shattered nearby boulders. Cell countered with a vicious knee to Goku's gut, then teleported behind him, aiming a lethal chop at his neck. But Goku vanished, reappearing above Cell and driving him into the ground with a meteor kick. Vegeta watched, torn between vengeance and survival, when a sudden cry snapped him to attention: Goten, cornered by Cell's energy clones. The boy's face was streaked with dirt and tears, but his fists were raised, a flicker of Super Saiyan gold igniting around him. "Stay away from me," he yelled, firing a wild Masenko. The blast scattered the clones, but Cell himself emerged unscathed, his hand closing around Goten's throat. "Such potential," he mused. "Pity it'll go to waste." Vegeta's instincts overrode his hatred. "Not my son's killer," he roared, blasting forward in a streak of blue. His fist connected with Cell's jaw, sending the bio-android crashing through a mountainside. Goten gasped for air, collapsing into Vegeta's arms. For a heartbeat, the two enemies locked eyes, Vegeta's pride warring with an unspoken understanding. Then, with a grunt, he shoved Goten aside. "Stay back, brat. This isn't your fight." Cell emerged from the rubble, his body already regenerating. "How quaint," he sneered. "The mighty Vegeta, playing hero." He raised his palm, a swirling sphere of black energy forming. "Let's see how you handle this." The blast rocketed toward them, but Goku intercepted it with a desperate instant transmission, redirecting the explosion skyward. The force still sent them all tumbling, the landscape now a war zone of craters and flames. Panting, Goku wiped blood from his lip. "We can't beat him alone, Vegeta." The prince glared, but the truth was undeniable. With a grudging nod, he muttered, "This changes nothing between us." Together, they charged, their attacks sinking in a brutal combo, Goku's God Bind holding Cell in place while Vegeta hammered him with a final flash. The beam seared through Cell's chest, but he laughed, the wound sealing instantly. "Is that all?" he taunted. Then, from the smoke, a third aura flared, Goten, his eyes blazing with a mix of grief and fury. "You hurt my family," he whispered, his power spiking unnaturally. A golden and blue aura erupted around him, a unstable fusion of Super Saiyan and God Ki. "Now I'll hurt you." He shot forward, his fists a blur, each strike landing with terrifying precision. Cell staggered, his confidence wavering for the first time. Goku and Vegeta exchanged a stunned glance before joining the assault, their combined might finally pushing Cell back. But just as victory seemed within reach, a shadow loomed overhead, Frieza, descending with a smirk, his golden form gleaming. My, he purred. "What a delightful mess." The battlefield fell silent, the stakes higher than ever. To be continued. The air was thick with the scent of scorched earth and ozone as Goku stood over the lifeless body of Trunks, his fists trembling. Vegeta's roar of anguish echoed across the battlefield, a sound so raw it seemed to shake the very heavens. "Kakarot. You will pay for this with your life." Vegeta's aura erupted in a violent crimson, his power surging beyond anything Goku had ever felt from him. The ground cracked beneath his feet as he lunged, fists blazing with ki. Goku barely dodged, the shockwave of Vegeta's punch carving a canyon into the landscape behind him. "Vegeta, listen. I didn't want this, something's controlling me." Goku's voice was strained, his own body moving against his will. But Vegeta wasn't hearing it. His eyes burned with vengeance, his attacks relentless. Meanwhile, Goten staggered to his feet, his small frame trembling as he stared at his father in horror. "Dad. Why?" Goku's eyes flickered to his son, a flicker of agony crossing his face before his expression hardened again. His body moved on its own, his hand rising, energy gathering at his fingertips. "No. Stay back, Goten." Goku gritted his teeth, fighting the invisible force puppeteering him, but it was no use. A beam of light shot toward Goten. The boy barely had time to raise his arms before the blast engulfed him. The explosion sent shockwaves through the battlefield, dust and debris obscuring the aftermath. Vegeta's rage reached a fever pitch. "You monster!" He vanished, reappearing behind Goku with a devastating elbow to his spine. Goku grunted, crashing into the ground. Before he could recover, Vegeta unleashed a barrage of ki blasts, each one detonating like a miniature supernova. Goku rolled, barely avoiding the worst of it, but the attacks were relentless. His body ached, his mind screaming against the control that had turned him into a weapon. Then, a voice cut through the chaos, cold, mocking. How touching. The mighty scions, tearing each other apart. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in darkness, his golden eyes gleaming with malice. It was Zamasu, but not as they remembered him. His form flickered between corporeal and ethereal, his power radiating like a black sun. You've done well, Goku. Your hands are stained with the blood of your own kin. A fitting punishment for those who defy the gods. Goku's eyes widened. Zamasu? But, you were destroyed. The realization hit him like a freight train. This wasn't just mind control. Zamasu had fused with the remnants of the universe's negative energy, becoming something far worse, a being of pure corruption, feeding on their despair. Vegeta didn't care. I don't care what you are, you're next. He launched himself at Zamasu, fists blazing. But Zamasu merely smirked, raising a hand. A wave of dark energy pulsed outward, halting Vegeta mid-air. The Saiyan Prince gasped as his muscles locked, his body convulsing. Pathetic. Even your rage is nothing before a god's will. Zamasu clenched his fist, and Vegeta screamed as dark tendrils wrapped around him, sapping his strength. Goku forced himself up, his body screaming in protest. He had to stop this. But how? His mind raced. If Zamasu was feeding on their conflict, then fighting only made him stronger. There had to be another way. Then he remembered, the spirit bomb. A technique of pure energy, drawn from the righteous heart. If he could gather enough energy, maybe he could purge Zamasu's corruption. But he needed time. And allies. Goten. Trunks, Goku shouted, praying they were still alive. To his relief, a weak groan came from the smoke. Goten crawled forward, battered but alive. Trunks, however, wasn't moving. Goku's heart clenched, but there was no time to grieve. Goten, listen to me. I need you to buy me time. Distract Zamasu, just for a minute. Goten nodded shakily, forcing himself up. He wiped blood from his lip and clenched his fists. I won't let you down, Dad. As Goten charged, Goku raised his hands to the sky, calling upon the energy of the planet. The air hummed as faint streams of light began gathering in his palms. Zamasu noticed immediately. Foolish mortal. Do you truly think that will work against me? He flung Vegeta aside like a ragdoll and turned to Goku, but Goten intercepted him with a desperate Kamehameha. The beam struck Zamasu head on, but the dark god merely laughed, swatting it away like a bothersome insect. You insects are relentless. Very well, I'll crush you first. Zamasu's hand shot out, seizing Goten by the throat. The boy gagged, his feet kicking wildly. Goku's focus wavered, his heart pounding. He needed more time. Just a few more seconds. But Goten's face was turning blue. Then, a sudden blast of energy struck Zamasu from behind. The dark god snarled, releasing Goten as he whirled around. Vegeta stood there, battered but unbroken, his eyes burning with defiance. You forgot about me, bastard. His aura flared, but it was different now, calmer, focused. Kakarot. Finish it. Goku didn't hesitate. The spirit bomb swelled above him, a radiant sphere of pure energy. With a roar, he hurled it at Zamasu. The dark god's eyes widened as the light engulfed him. For a moment, the battlefield was silent, bathed in blinding radiance. Then, Zamasu's scream tore through the air, a sound of pure agony. The corruption binding Goku shattered, and he collapsed to his knees, gasping. But as the light faded, Zamasu's laughter echoed once more. His form was damaged, flickering, but not gone. You cannot destroy me. I am eternal. His body began reforming, the darkness writhing like living shadows. Goku's stomach dropped. It wasn't enough. They were out of options. Then, a voice whispered in his mind, an old friend's voice. Goku. There's one last way. Goku's eyes widened. Kaioken. Times 100. It would kill him. But if it meant saving everyone. He met Vegeta's gaze, and for the first time, the prince nodded in understanding. Do it. Goku took a deep breath. Then, with a scream that shook the world, he unleashed everything he had. The battlefield was a wasteland of shattered rock and smoldering craters, the air thick with the scent of burning energy. Goku stood panting, his muscles aching from the relentless clash, his eyes locked onto the figure across from him, Trunks, his once loyal ally, now consumed by an unfathomable rage. The young Saiyan's golden hair flickered with unstable energy, his teeth bared in a snarl. You took everything from me, Trunks roared, his voice cracking with fury. Goku clenched his fists, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He had no choice, Trunks had been lost to darkness, a danger to the entire universe. But facing him now, seeing the pain in his eyes, made every strike feel like betrayal. With a sudden burst of speed, Trunks lunged, his fist crackling with violet energy. Goku barely dodged, the shockwave of the mist blow carving a trench into the earth. He countered with a sharp elbow to Trunks' ribs, but the younger Saiyan twisted midair, delivering a spinning kick that sent Goku skidding back. Dust swirled around them as they circled, each waiting for the other to make a move. Goku exhaled, tapping into Ultra Instinct, his body moving on pure instinct. His aura flared silver, his senses sharpening. Trunks smirked, his own power surging as dark energy wreathed around him. "You think that's enough?" he taunted, vanishing in a blur. Goku barely registered the impact before Trunks' knee slammed into his gut, lifting him off the ground. A follow-up punch rocketed him skyward, but Goku twisted mid-flight, firing a point-blank Kamehameha downward. The beam seared through the air, but Trunks crossed his arms, deflecting it with a shockwave that split the clouds. Before Goku could recover, Trunks was on him again, his fists a storm of relentless blows. Each strike sent shockwaves through Goku's body, his Ultra Instinct flickering under the assault. He needed to adapt, fast. Gritting his teeth, Goku feinted left before ducking low, sweeping Trunks' legs out from under him. As Trunks fell, Goku channeled his energy into his palm, unleashing a point-blank energy blast that sent the younger warrior crashing into the canyon wall. Rocks cascaded down, but Trunks burst through the debris, his eyes blazing. "You're still holding back," he spat, his aura erupting into a swirling vortex of dark and gold. His power skyrocketed, the ground trembling beneath him. Goku's eyes widened, Trunks was pushing beyond his limits, just like he had. The two clashed again, their fists meeting in a shockwave that shattered the landscape. Goku's muscles burned, his breath ragged, but he refused to yield. He needed to end this before Trunks destroyed himself, or worse, the planet. Channeling every ounce of his energy, Goku's aura flared brighter, his hair shifting between gold and silver. Trunks mirrored him, their powers escalating in a deadly dance. The final exchange came in a flash. Trunks lunged with a scream, his fist aimed for Goku's heart. Goku sidestepped at the last moment, his own fist driving into Trunks' chest. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the battlefield, the sheer force knocking both fighters back. Trunks staggered, his energy flickering, his body failing. Goku caught him as he collapsed, lowering him gently to the ground. "I'm sorry," Goku whispered, his voice heavy with regret. Trunks' breathing slowed, his eyes losing their fire. "I just wanted them back," he murmured before falling still. Goku knelt there, the weight of his victory crushing him. He had done what he had to, but the cost was unbearable. The sky darkened as if morning, and in that moment, Goku knew, this battle would haunt him forever. The air crackled with energy as the battlefield trembled under the weight of two titans clashing. Goku's fists blurred, each strike carrying the fury of a father betrayed, by himself. Trunks lay motionless in the distance, his body broken by the very hands that once trained him. Across the ruined landscape, Goten's lifeless eyes stared at the sky, a victim of his own father's uncontrollable rage. The dark energy swirling around Goku pulsed like a second heartbeat, his Saiyan blood boiling with the corrupted power of the Shadow Dragon. Barely standing, Vegeta wiped blood from his lip, his breath ragged. "You've gone too far, Kakarot," he growled. His body ached, his armor shattered, but his pride burned brighter than ever. "You think this power makes you invincible? You're just a monster now." Goku's laughter was hollow, echoing like thunder. "Power is all that matters," he hissed, his voice distorted. "You're weak, Vegeta. You always were." With a sudden burst of speed, he closed the distance, his fist slamming into Vegeta's gut. The Prince of Scions coughed blood, his knees buckling, but he refused to fall. Then, light. A golden aura erupted around Vegeta, his hair spiking into the familiar glow of Super Saiyan. But this was different. The energy surged, climbing higher, wilder. His muscles swelled, veins bulging as his scream tore through the battlefield. "You took my son," he roared. "Now I take everything from you." The transformation completed, Super Saiyan 3. Goku barely had time to react before Vegeta's fist collided with his jaw, sending him skidding across the ground. Rocks shattered in his wake as he tumbled. Snarling, Goku flipped midair, landing in a crouch. His dark aura flared, tendrils of energy lashing out like serpents. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. Vegeta didn't answer. He charged, fists a blur, each punch fueled by grief and vengeance. The earth quaked as their blows connected, shockwaves ripping through the landscape. Goku blocked, countered, But Vegeta was relentless. A knee to Goku's ribs. An elbow to his temple. Blood sprayed as Goku staggered, his vision swimming. Then, pain. Goku gasped as Vegeta's hand plunged into his chest, fingers gripping his heart. "This ends now," Vegeta whispered, his voice raw. For a moment, time stilled. Goku's eyes widened, the darkness in them flickering. A memory, Goten's laugh, Trunks' determined smile, Vegeta's grudging respect. The corruption wavered. With a final, agonized scream, Goku unleashed a blast of pure energy, not from rage, but from regret. The explosion engulfed them both, a blinding supernova of light and shadow. When the dust cleared, only one figure stood. Vegeta collapsed to his knees, his body spent. Goku lay before him, his breathing shallow, the dark energy dissipating like smoke. I'm sorry," Goku choked out, tears mixing with blood. The universe held its breath. The Shadow Dragon's influence was broken. The cost? 2 sons, a friendship shattered, and a world forever changed. As the sun rose over the ruins, Vegeta looked at his hands, stained with the blood of his rival, his brother. The war was over. But the scars would never fade.